Was a truly shocking moment in a Dallas courtroom. Ex-cop Amber Geiger convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Botham Jean. Geiger claims she mistook Jean's apartment for her own, thinking there was an intruder inside, that she was acting in self-defense. But in the end, the jury did not see it that way. They came back with a unanimous verdict after less than a full day of deliberations. Guilty. Court is scheduled to come back in session any moment now. We could learn Amber Geiger's sentence as early as today. There could be victim impact statements, so we're going to monitor all that for you. But let's take you to Dallas, a man who was inside the courtroom for that dramatic moment. Our Ed Levendera. Ed, what was it like in court when that verdict was read?
It was extremely tense. Everything came together very quickly from the moment we had heard that the jury had a verdict. Extremely tense. After the verdict was read, Botham Jean's family sobbing from emotion. His mother held her hands up inside the courtroom in relief. And you could hear cheers from outside the courtroom. People who had shown up here to get a glimpse of this verdict being read, and those loud cheers could be heard inside the courtroom. Mike.
And so what can we expect this afternoon? Could we learn sentencing today, and what are the potential sentences?
We don't have a real indication of just how long the sentencing phase of this trial will take. We do know that the judge wants to move things along because this jury has been sequestered, staying in a hotel overnight since last Monday. So they do want to move this along as quickly as possible. But this is almost like probably the best way to think about this is perhaps like another mini trial, if you will, as Amber Geiger's attorneys will be able to put on witnesses to speak to her character and any other mitigating circumstances that they want to share with the jury. Prosecutors will do the same. So there is some testimony expected to be heard. And then we decide we would learn the fate. And Amber Geiger faces anywhere between 5 years and life in prison. And we should point out that there was another officer convicted a little more than a year ago here in Dallas County from a Dallas suburb. As an officer who shot at a car of teenagers leaving the scene of a party. That officer was convicted here in Dallas County, and that officer received 15 years after being convicted for murder charges. A very different case factually than this one, but that kind of perhaps gives you some insight and some indication of how things might play out here in the sentencing phase.
Got it. Ed, you know, we're looking at video right now. We see the back of Amber Geiger. Potentially she's emotional earlier today in court. Has there been official reaction? Anybody speaking outside of court after the verdict was read?
Well, we've only heard from the attorneys representing Botham Jean's family. They celebrated this verdict. They were, I think, maybe perhaps slightly surprised by the murder verdict. Remember, this jury could have considered the lesser charge of manslaughter, although they do feel that it was, they say they feel it was the correct verdict, that if the roles had been reversed, Botham Jean would have been convicted of murder. And they also said this was for the many unarmed black men in America who have been shot and killed by police officers, where they say justice was not served in many of those cases. So they, took a much bigger picture and a much bigger meaning from what this verdict means. We have not heard from prosecutors or defense attorneys or anyone in Amber Geiger's family. There is a gag order in this case, and because the sentencing phase is not over, none of those people are allowed to speak out publicly just yet.
Okay, Ed, thanks so much. I want to bring in our experts, our HLN legal analyst, great criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson's with us, and Cheryl Dorsey joins us as well, retired LAPD sergeant. Joey, I'll start with you. Really, for both of you, I want to get your reactions, but your reaction when you heard guilty and guilty of murder.
The reaction, Mike, good to be with you and my friend Cheryl Dorsey as well, was wow, right? Wow. That was my reaction, I have to say, and I was quite surprised. I didn't think they'd get there. I thought that they certainly wouldn't convict of murder. I didn't think they'd convict of manslaughter. So, you know what? The jury spoke. They spoke loudly and clearly. But if that's the question before me, which is how I felt about it, amazing. At the same time, in terms of just a shock, at the same time, it had to resonate that you have a person who is in their own home, minding their own business, having the luxury and just relaxing, and they end up dead. And it begs the question, how could this happen? Under what circumstances could it be allowed to occur? And the jury answered that question. They said under no circumstance. And as a result of that, the 26-year-old accountant that we're looking at now, I think, they honored his life by convicting.
Yeah, and again, I want to let everybody know we could learn Amber Geiger's sentence today. We could have victim impact statements today. We'll keep tabs on the courtroom for you. Cheryl, were you surprised at the guilty verdict?
I was pleasantly surprised because, listen, I talk all along about great deference given to a police officer's version, and Amber created a scenario and she stuck to it. I was scared. You know, I thought I was going to die. But the problem with that is that she was unable to articulate what scared her beside the fact that she was within close proximity to a black man. And so just because a black man might frighten you, you don't get to take his life. And so I am pleasantly surprised.
Joey Jackson, I thought of the two closing arguments, the prosecution was more compelling. I thought the defense was just instructing the jury mostly on the law, and maybe that's what you have to do. Correct me if I go astray here, but here's some of the points made by the prosecution, that her unreasonable decisions led to the death of an innocent man, that her story was absurd. There's no way she should not have known that was her apartment. The smell of marijuana is wafting out. She had to have known. Also, self-defense. Self-defense from what? Is he a threat? The guy's in his own home eating ice cream. She went in commando style and executed who and whatever was in there. And then, Joe, I want to play this for you. This is Amber Geiger on the stand. And it's to that point when the prosecutor gets her to admit she had an intent to kill. Let's listen to that. We'll get your take coming out.
When you shot at Mr. Jean, you knew you were using deadly force against him.
Yes.
You know what a bullet can do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And when you shot at him twice, you intended to kill him.
Yes, sir.
How far did that moment there go to convicting her?
I think it went very far, very far. You admitted intent. What's the issue before the jury? The issue is intent. To your point about instructing the jury on the law, there are some judges who don't let you go near that. They'll say, Mr. Jackson, you know I'm the judge, right? And I instruct on the law. Proceed with your argument, sir. Different jurisdictions vary. This one, apparently, you're allowed to talk about the law. Now, certainly you want to weave in your closing argument what the law, elements of the law, to make them fit with your facts. But clearly, Mike, I think the prosecution, you know, in their closing arguments at least, took the defense, right, to the cleaners, in as much as saying, right, you don't have to hear it from me. You don't have to hear from the defense. She admits the element of intent. That's what this is all about. It's not about premeditation. We don't need to be lying in wait and waiting for a week for someone to come home to kill them. At that very moment, it should be, you know, it could occur. And clearly, as it relates to intent, they co-opted that and said, you know what, there was intent. And, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't find intent, then certainly you have to find that she acted unreasonably with regard to being in an apartment that was not hers, going in there, as you mentioned, Mike, commando style, shooting and killing him. Game over.
Yeah. Cheryl, another point made by the prosecutor was that you had two options. You go in as you did, and they laid it out there, it was commando style. You went in guns a-blazing was the terms they used, or you back off. It would have been safer for you and Botham Jean still alive. Let's listen to a little bit of that. Want to get your take coming out.
Okay.
Here were your options then. Your options were, at this point, to go in and find the threat, or your option would have been, I'm going to back off, I'm going to take a position of cover and concealment, and I'm going to get some help out here. Those are options, right?
They are.
Okay. But you chose option A, which was I'm going in to find the threat.
That was the only option that went through my head. I was at home.
Cheryl, do you think that resonated with the jury, that if she backs off, she's safer and Botham Jean's alive today?
Absolutely. And listen, we know that that wasn't the only option in her head, because you can't unknow your training. You can't unlearn what you know as a police officer. And so in this instance, it cuts both ways, because let's say she was on duty responding to a burglary. She looked in through a crack and saw at least one suspect, could have been more than one. Training mandates that you back up, take a position of cover and concealment, and request backup. She was still in uniform. She had the ability to do everything off duty that she could have done on duty. She made a choice to go in, engage the threat, and so now there's a consequence.
Yeah, I mean, and the prosecution said, what kind of threat? The guy's eating ice cream. I mean, all those real-world examples must have stuck with this jury. Joey, Cheryl, guys, stick around. We're monitoring what's going on in court. Want to let you know that. We could have victim impact statements, and we could find out Amber Geiger's sentence any moment now. But it was a stunning verdict, despite her remorse. The verdict, guilty.
Didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I'm an off-duty officer. I thought I was in my apartment, and I shot a guy thinking that he was. I thought it was my apartment. to lose my job. I'm just tired. I thought it was my apartment. I thought it was my apartment.
That was Amber Geiger's defense. A tragic mistake. She thought it was her apartment, but in the end, the verdict, guilty. This trial lasted 7 days, and it took the jury less than 24 hours to return that guilty verdict for an ex-police officer of murdering her upstairs neighbor, Botham Jean. Want to bring back our experts, Joey Jackson, Great Chrome defense attorney, and Cheryl Dorsey, retired LAPD sergeant. Want everybody know, by the way, we are monitoring what's going on in court, victim impact statements, and we could learn Amber Geiger's sentence today as well. Guys, I want to get your take on as the prosecution laid out their arguments, and they won the day. Let's be honest here. At the end of closing yesterday, one refrain was, this case is about accountability, consequences, and really brought it home that the home should be a sanctuary. Someone should not be able to come into your house and shoot and kill you. Let's listen to that, and we'll get both of your responses coming out.
How do you feel what you did, Mr. John?
I feel like a terrible person. I feel like a piece of crap. I hate it. I hate it. I hate that I have to live with this every single day of my life. And I ask God for forgiveness. And I hate myself every single day.
When they talk about deadly force, and she had to use deadly force because that was what was going on in her mind. You think about Bo about to eat some ice cream and ask yourself, is Bo a threat? Because you know what? Nobody was going to die that night. If she had thought for 1 second, you know what probably would have happened? She would have walked in, she would have felt embarrassed for a second, and knowing Bo's character, he probably would have laughed it off. They would have sat down and watched TV, and Bo would have made a new friend.
She didn't have to do it. That's that argument. Joey, your thoughts?
Look, the thought is that apparently the jury felt it was very effective. I think they evaluated a number of things. First of all, they evaluated the distractions with respect to the sexting, didn't do her any favors. They evaluated the fact that, and Cheryl Dorsey alluded to this before, you go and you conceal and you get cover as opposed to going in. That's your training. Why go in the first instance? They evaluated her not giving any CPR after the fact, and they certainly evaluated the statements that were made in the closing argument. You know, look, the fact is that you should never, ever, home being a sanctuary, be subjected to an assault, much less a death, when you're eating a bowl of ice cream. And I think that was just too hard for a jury to overlook. I think they felt her actions were unreasonable and irresponsible. And as a result of that, they spoke volumes with their verdict. Guilty, sure. Murder one.
Yeah, Cheryl, what about that argument? The home's got to be a sanctuary. We can't have this happening. People barging in and killing someone and claiming mistake.
Absolutely. Listen, accountability is something that was demanded by the community and justified. And listen, credibility was also an issue here because she took the stand and we heard her in her own words say she's sorry, but not for killing Botham Jean. She's sorry because she knows she's going to be held accountable. We know that to be true because as soon as she shot him, as he lay bleeding out on the carpet in his own apartment, she's calling her boyfriend, another woman's husband, and telling him, come here, I need you, I effed up. And we know that 2 days later, she continued to text and sext with her married partner. So she's sorry because her life is forever changed, not because she killed Botham Jean.
Credibility an issue. Joey, and we heard just a little bit of it there a moment ago where she was crying, that she hates herself, how bad she feels. Did you think as she was testifying, maybe the jury would soften to her?
I did. Quite frankly, I did. Yes, I felt that she did herself a service in her testimony. I felt that she appeared to be contrite. I felt that she appeared to be comported in a way that she understood the gravity of her actions and what she did. And therefore, you know, I thought her testimony was compelling. Her admission of intending to kill him, I didn't care for, but, you know, meaning that I said, wow, that can hurt her, you know, but it could be explained, as the defense did. But, of course, she intended to kill him. He was an intruder. I thought it would soften the jury. It did not. There were many compelling factors here, and I do think, Mike, to your point, a core point, no one should have to die in their own home. I think your castle is a sanctuary. Your home is a sanctuary. Too much for the jury to really overcome and get through.
Yeah, and that was I thought the prosecution brought that home well, and you just used the words, a home's got to be a sanctuary. Cheryl, as we await here sentencing, from what Ed said, it could be anywhere from 5 to 99 years. What are you expecting?
Well, listen, I don't know what to expect, but obviously she can't get the ultimate penalty, but I think it certainly should be something commiserate with the sentence that she bestowed upon Botham Jean, and so I hope that she gets the maximum.
Okay, we shall see. Joey, Cheryl, guys, thanks again so much, and we will continue to monitor what's going on in court as things continue to play out. What a dramatic day there in Dallas. Also this.